like it's now time to jump into perspective.
Akmak.
Goulash?
Akmak.
Oh, goulash, goulash, goulash.
Akmak.
Goulash, goulash.
Akmak.
Goulash, goulash.
Akmak. Akmak.
End scene. And on that note, we're going to jump right into our program.
Akmak, goulash, great, yeah. A sea of blankness. Go fish. What else? What do you think they were saying? Two different conversations, right? I love these perspectives. See right there? Yeah. Maybe not the best way to start. So this is one of my favorite things about the theater, right? One story, endless meanings. Now here's a different question for you. What do we fail to learn when we ignore or reject the perspective of our audience? All right, so imagine this. It's spring, 2011. You are a freshman in college, about to watch Baylor University Theater's production of Nilo Cruz's Pulitzer Prize-winning Anna in the Tropics. It's a story of a Cuban-American family running a cigar factory in Ybor City, Florida in the late 1920s. Now, as radios and radio programs weren't yet widely spread and available, it was not uncommon for factories like these to hire a lector. This was a literate professional who would read to the factory workers during their shifts. And the play opens with the highly anticipated arrival of a new lector, Juan Julian. Now, Juan Julian is charismatic, he's intelligent, he's attractive. For perspective, in the 2002 Broadway premiere of Anna in the Tropics, Juan Julian was played by film and television star Jimmy Smits, best known for LA Law, NYPD Blue, The West Wing. I mean, that is Juan Julian. And he is at the center of much of the conflict and drama surrounding this family, which happens in parallel with Juan Julian reading Anna Karenina, the 19th century Russian classic about a scandalous extramarital affair between socialite Anna and the young Count Vronsky. So anybody care to wager where they think this play and its actions are going? So Anna in the Tropics presents a difficult, let's call it a bait and switch for directors to overcome. In the first scene, as I mentioned, the family waits eagerly for the entrance of Juan Julian. There is a lot of anticipation. Like, what will he be like? What have you heard of him? I wonder what he'll read. And much of that anticipation is driven by Morella, the youngest daughter to the factory owner, Santiago, and his wife, Ophelia. Morella is portrayed as young, late teens. She's naive with a predictable blend of awkwardness and boy craze. And when Juan Julian enters the stage, well, Morella is immediately smitten. I mean, she has never seen a man so confident, so charming, so handsome. And when he exits and the family's ready to follow, Morella stays glued to her spot. You see, in her elation at the sight of Juan Julian, Morella has peed herself. And in Baylor's production, the actress playing Morella had a device which she controlled, which created the illusion of urine running down her leg and pooling on stage at her feet. That's how this play begins. A visceral shock effect, but for the purpose of lightness and comedy. Now the challenge, this play doesn't live long in that comic lightness, as it quickly turns the corner with its own extramarital affair, followed by a rape, and ultimately culminating in the onstage murder of one of the play's central figures. I mean, it gets deep, and it gets dark. And it can be tricky presenting mature or adult content for a younger audience. Now, to be fair, Baylor Productions are open to the entire community and to audiences of all ages, but they're primarily composed of those students taking the department's theater appreciation courses. This is a 100-level course. It is largely made up of freshmen and sophomores, 18 to 20-year-olds. The university's Christian mission further complicates this relationship between audience and production. I mean, there's a long, tenuous history pitting faith-based organizations against theater performers and performance art, which is why I applaud Baylor's continuing mission to challenge their audiences with provocative and evocative stories. I mean, I wouldn't have applied to the institution for my master's degree if I didn't. But the perfect storm of an ambitious play with an abrupt genre shift presented for a young, conservative, Christian audience resulted in an opening night experience which, well, changed my view of the theater forever. So, as a first-year graduate student, I was responsible for house managing opening night. I'd already seen a dress rehearsal of the production, so I had no real intention of peeking my head in to watch. Although during Act 1, there was a lot more giggling than I remember feeling when seeing the play. I mean, every audience is exceptional, so I didn't think much of it. That is until the director came in, clearly agitated. This audience is terrible. Well, now my morbid curiosity had the best of me. So, at the start of Act 2, I stood at the back of the theater to see what this terrible audience was all about. And sure enough, an onstage romantic scene between Juan Julian and Conchita, the wife of another character, was met with hoots and hollers. Okay, sexuality makes many of us uncomfortable, and all you have to do is attend a crowded theater during the showing of a horror film to realize that audiences combat anxiety and discomfort with a little bit of absurdity and humor. But how would the audience respond as the play pushes beyond what could be perceived as uncomfortable sexuality and into themes much more sinister? In one of the final scenes of the play, Morella has just enjoyed a tender moment with Juan Julian. I know, seriously, that guy. And stands alone on stage with her thoughts and feelings surrounding this romantic encounter. Unexpectedly, another character abducts her from behind, one hand on her left upper thigh, the other over her mouth. He begins to drag her forcibly upstage, accompanied by her muffled screams, as the lights quickly fade to blackout and the end of the scene. Tastefully staged, but still effective, and its meaning very clear. Morella is about to be raped. Then in total darkness, laughter and giggles erupt throughout the theater. And the same reaction occurs one scene later when a character is shot and killed on stage. Yeah, what the fuck, right? Now, if that were the end of the story, we could sit here and wax philosophical over the motives which precipitated this fairly egregious response to the production. I might even have some answers for you. Like, did the audience simply reject the play's genre shift and instead maintain a humorous and lighthearted backbone? Was this a result of immaturity, an audience too young to embrace this challenging material? Or were we witnessing something more? Perhaps behavior indicative of the looming need for a strong, united Me Too movement. Remember, it's 2011. We're still 6 years away from Alyssa Milano's famous contribution. And as some of you might know, just a few years from now, Baylor would be at the center of an NCAA investigation in which coaches, administrators, even the president would step down for covering up allegations of rape and abuse at the hands of student athletes. Unfortunately, those questions were never explored because that was not the end of this story. When the play concluded and curtain call began, the director found me. Don't let anyone leave. Okay. There are 350 people in the audience, but I'll do my best. As curtain call finished, instead of the house lights coming up, the audience remained in darkness, and the director entered the stage with a single spotlight cast upon his formidable silhouette. What happened next can only be described as a lengthy and scathing chastisement of the audience's behavior. I mean, he pointed out the disrespect shown to the production and the hard work of the actors, the degree to which the response was inappropriate in relationship to the content material, and finally apologized to those patrons who were well-behaved and whose experience was undoubtedly spoiled by the misconduct of others. It was uncomfortable. Now, in the weeks which followed, I kind of obsessed over this once-in-a-lifetime response to a theatrical production. I mean, I taught high school for 3 years. I have never witnessed a director take actions like these. And because I was in graduate school and everything's the opportunity for a research paper, I interviewed the director. I interviewed actors from the production, even other faculty members. Each sided with the decision of the director to publicly scrutinize the behavior of the audience. In the theater appreciation courses I served as teaching assistant for, we tried to get curious around those responses from opening night. I mean, why the heck did people laugh? Regrettably, honesty around that information was lost. I mean, the audience had already been scolded. How were these individuals supposed to share their feelings transparently in another environment in which they might be told they watched the play wrong? So the responses we received felt a little guarded and withholding. There was a lot of, I like the play, I don't know why the director got mad. Largely because of this experience, my academic scholarship and research focuses almost exclusively on audiences and what's commonly referred to as reader response theory, which is a two-part concept. One, theatrical production, a piece of art, a story, or novel isn't finished until it's been experienced by an audience. Right? The audience is necessary to fully establish meaning. And two, because of that, the artist doesn't get to own the meaning behind their art. And this is a really challenging concept for a lot of artists, because legitimately, who wants to pour their heart and soul into a meaningful artistic endeavor, only to have that stripped away by an audience which may or may not get it? Right? I mean, that's why we have so many closet artists. Now, in recent years, the theater has made some unique choices, which I believe, deliberate or inadvertent, has redefined the way in which audiences respond to and participate in this creation of meaning. Right? The conventions surrounding our contemporary understanding of audience responsibility during a theatrical event, right? I, as the audience member, walk into the theater, the house lights come down, I consume the story passively and with a certain level of decorum. This is all pretty new. Within about the last 100 years. Prior to that, it was difficult to wrangle and control the presence of an audience, so theater didn't try. In fact, audiences took a much more active role in the production. Aristophanes, the ancient Greek comic playwright, was notorious for just including audiences in his productions. And why not? Audiences were going to participate, whether that participation was welcome or not. And audiences have gotten some of that back through immersive and participatory styles of theater. I mean, even now, what we're experiencing is known as direct address, in which I negate the presence of an imaginary fourth wall and speak directly to the audience. But a lot of theater still ascribes to a set of rules defined by the realism movement, in which audiences serve as voyeurs into the lives of other people. For the most part, actors ignore the presence of the audience, and the audience is expected to understand their role is to see and hear, not be seen and heard. And when that social contract is breached, well, we've seen audiences police audiences, critics critique audiences, even actors break character mid-performance to berate improper audience behavior. And I have to be honest, I'm a little over it. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, because I'm not saying that I've secretly wished for this audience to revolt against this presentation. Because You probably won't, but if you do, we'll have it on video forever. What I've never been able to shake from that opening night response to Anna in the Tropics is what we failed to learn. Because rather than getting curious around what was immediately perceived as indecent, even offensive audience behavior, was simply attacked. Right? Instead of meeting the audience where they were, the production attempted to control future audiences with warning messages. This performance contains mature content. And as you might imagine, students get to see the play, quickly learn what will happen if they, quote unquote, misbehave. But that opening night audience response, malignant or otherwise, was honest and sincere and full of the potential to investigate and study. Instead, the production cast judgment, saying, your response is wrong. What's the purpose of challenging audiences if we're not going to allow for a full spectrum of responses? I mean, how do we grow as artists, as business leaders, as the creators of new products and new services, if we're not going to allow the audience to complete the experience and create meaning? I mean, in my opinion, that's why theater productions benefit from the presence and perspective of a director. Prior to about 150 years ago, there was no well-established director role as we know it today. The person responsible for staging a play would also serve other functions. Might be the playwright, as was the case during ancient Greece. Might be a prominent actor or actor manager, as we know from many Renaissance-era troupes, including the Lord Chamberlain's Men, of which Shakespeare was a member. But it's not until the mid-19th century that a German duke, the Duke of Saxe-Meiningen, steps away from all other responsibilities related to the theater to exclusively serve as the director of the production. And this is a really important shift because a playwright already has a perspective, right? An actor, a costume designer, a lighting designer already has a perspective. But prior to the inception of the stage director, there was one valuable perspective missing from the rehearsal process. Can you guess what it was? The audience, that's right. And that's the role of a good director, is to be a play's first audience member. It's my belief there is no more important function for a director than to help shape how future audiences see, feel, hear, and experience a theatrical play. I mean, Duke of Saxe-Meiningen went to great lengths to fulfill this task. Now, he was wealthy in his own right and benefited from extensive rehearsal time, but sometimes he would rehearse a play for a year and a half. Yeah, before sharing it with an audience, all to influence the experience. And I use this word influence intentionally because it's not the responsibility of the director to impose a predetermined will. Right? It's an unrealistic expectation to believe that we can control or homogenize an audience experience. I mean, even now, there are what, 150, 200 people in this room? I expect each of you will take away something a little bit different. Like, I'll still rehearse, right? I'll play with language and delivery to emphasize certain content and hopefully shape a predictable response. But the responsibility of the director is to be the first experience, not create the only experience. Can I have the actors back up on stage? We're going to play this scene again, except this time I'm going to provide just a little bit of direction and feedback and hopefully shape your experience.
Testing. Am I on? Yep, okay.
All right.
My actor name is Brandine Dubois.
So in the interest of time, I'm just going to give you guys a couple of notes, right? So what I'd like you to do is let's stay downstage center, right, as this thing starts, okay? When things kind of shift and the conversation becomes a little more intimate, okay, I want you to kind of pull away from him, play that to the audience, although it's to Joe, right? And then Joe, the one thing that I want to capture from this scene is like this element of danger. Okay, Marty is just off stage. Marty's your wife, right? And so even though you're protected by the language barrier, there's like a little bit of danger that's taking place right here. Okay? So try that again for me and let's just see what it looks like. Yeah. Action.
Akmak.
Goulash?
Akmak.
Goulash, 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 goulash.
Akmak.
Goulash, goulash.
Akmak.
How do I intimately get involved with the audience without looking at my actor? Like this?
Sorry.
Something like this?
All right. So this is entirely just a staging thing. I want them to be able to see you. So you're going to speak to Joe, but I just want you to come. I want a little bit of distance, right? You're sharing a little bit of vulnerability here. Okay, in terms of your own loneliness, right? Okay. So yeah, so play to us, but you're playing to him.
Goulash. Goulash.
Akmak. Akmak.
End scene.
End scene.
Okay, I'm gonna keep my day job.
I love this play. It's called Circle Mirror Transformation. It was written by Annie Baker. It's one of her Vermont plays. The whole production takes place over a series of weeks at a local community center hosting an ongoing improvisation class. Now, what I find fascinating is that this scene is modeled on a common improvisation game, right? Two individuals on stage attempting to communicate through nonsense. It requires focus, presence of mind, intention, except during this scene, the playwright has also scripted the internal monologue of the two actors, right? So they know the intention of the playwright and are expected to deliver that for an audience. My role as director and first audience member is to help shape that delivery. Now, what do you think they're saying? Okay, maybe a disagreement.
Like two people who knew each other who haven't seen each other in a while being like, oh, is that you?
Oh, I like that, right? Two individuals who just haven't seen each other in a while, right? And reconnecting. What else?
She's interested in him, but he's not as interested in her.
Oh, there's like a love interest that's mingling, right? Ooh, what's going on here? What else? Anybody else? I saw your hand go up, but. Nailed it. Yeah. You guys want to know what they're saying? Of course you do. You're curious human beings. Guess what? It doesn't matter. Right? Nothing they are saying could be more relevant or timely than what you believe they're saying. The feeling you have, that's the experience you need. Now, as a director, that might annoy, frustrate, even upset me. Did I do something wrong? Did I miss something along the way? Is there a way I could have sculpted this moment to better influence my first experience, my preferred experience? Yeah, maybe. I might even feel tempted or compelled to show you exactly what they're saying, right? So that you watch the play correctly. I could post their internal dialogue up on this PowerPoint so that you'd get it. Or maybe, what's most important is for the audience to complete the meaning of the production, to experience it from your own perspective. I mean, theater exists to challenge audiences. Maybe this is how audiences challenge theater. I sincerely wish each of those Baylor audiences had the opportunity to watch Anna in the Tropics honestly and unfettered. Rape isn't funny, even when we know it's not real. Sure, artists sometimes play with the juxtaposition of death, sexuality, and humor, but even dark humor usually won't go near rape. So why did the audience laugh? Perhaps it was immaturity. Perhaps it was reasons more malicious. Maybe as an 18-year-old student watching the illusion of an imminent rape in what may or may not be the first play you've ever seen in your life results in the only response you can possibly think of in the moment to pull yourself out of this deeply uncomfortable and perhaps implicating situation. So you laugh. We'll never know. And that is the power of audiences and their perspectives, and what we risk losing when we fail to allow them to exist autonomously. What could have been an incredible learning opportunity and a wealth of information at a moment desperately needed was lost when the audience was deprived of their responsibility to complete the meaning of the play. I have one more question for you. You can probably guess what it is. What are you failing to learn by ignoring or rejecting the perspective of your audience? Thank you, guys.